So today, I'm going to be talking about what the hell is going on with Bitcoin. Maybe some of you have noticed that recently Bitcoin's back in the news. There's a lot of attention given to the technology. There's a lot of talks and press coverage. Or maybe you haven't noticed, that's fine. But I'm going to talk about what's going on, talk a little bit about the history as much as I can in 10 minutes. So I might not be more, a lot nuanced or go into the details since this is a lightning talk, but I'm going to try and paint a broader picture and also talk about how you can get started if you are interested in learning about the space. So I'm going to skip the slide about me. Rachel did a great introduction, so I'm going to move directly into the topic today. So like I mentioned, you might have noticed in the past few months, Bitcoin has been it's been really hot. There's a lot of interesting announcements. There's a lot of interesting news that's happening, and that's reflected in the price. So if you had bought Bitcoin less than 2 months ago, right now you would be having 30+% gains. Or even if we zoom back a little, if you bought Bitcoin back in mid-March, April, just before the pandemic began, around that time, it was under 5,000, and right now it's sitting around 13,000, or even more today, actually, it went up. But this is to indicate that there's something changing in the Bitcoin space, and there's a lot going on. So we're going to dive into that. But before we do that, quickly, let's take a look at what's happened in the past, in Bitcoin's past particularly. So Bitcoin was founded or created by this anonymous person called Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know if it's one person, if it's a group of people. They're completely anonymous, and we don't know who that is. But basically what they did was they released this white paper for Bitcoin in a mailing list, which was consisted of cryptographers and some computer scientists back in the day, and that was 2009. And from there, the initial few years was just this like niche group of people, mostly, cryptographers, cypherpunks, computer scientists who were interested in how this new technology can work, and super experimental. And I should point out that Bitcoin's not the first of its kind in terms of like being able to create a global electronic system. There were attempts made before Bitcoin, but none of them lasted. And when I say cypherpunks, it's usually, people who are advocating widespread use of cryptography and privacy-enhancing technologies as a means to bring about social and political change. So these people really believe in privacy technologies and cryptography. And then that was like the first few years. It was just super niche. And then it started to take this like shape and narrative of its own, where people started associating Bitcoin with illegal activities, like Bitcoin's used for drugs, Bitcoin's used for money laundering, so on and so forth. And the biggest example was like the Silk Road, where Bitcoin was used as a major form of transaction. However, I think that's a completely false narrative. As we know, the creator of Silk Road was caught because he used Bitcoin. And that comes in because there are misconceptions that Bitcoin is completely anonymous. It's not. It's pseudonymous. The entire Bitcoin blockchain is transparent. You can see what transactions people are making. And there are ways for law enforcement agencies to figure out the origin of the transaction. And that's how they caught the creator of Silk Road. So Bitcoin's really not a great use case for drug and like illegal activities. You would rather use cash, and which is shown in the numbers as well. If you look at the percentage of Bitcoin transactions used for illegal activities is less than 1%, and cash is still the king if you're talking about that industry. So that's a narrative that I think even today people think Bitcoin's associated with, but that's kind of breaking apart, and I'm glad that it is. To a point where a lot of institutions and organizations kind of wrote off Bitcoin in the early years. So before, I would say 2017, a lot of people were like, oh, Bitcoin's a fraud, it's not going to work, it's going to eventually blow up. And especially, I remember this statement made by JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon calling Bitcoin a fraud. And I will talk about why I specifically point that out. But what we saw was a lot of individuals and investors and retail people flocking into Bitcoin, and that was pretty unique because usually we see technology, invented and adopted by institutions and then finally trickling down to individuals and consumers. But this is the other way around, where individuals, around the world who were passionate about decentralization, controlling their own money, started learning about Bitcoin and understanding why it matters and evangelizing. So it was really organic the way, Bitcoin grew from that niche of cryptographers and computer scientists to this like worldwide known phenomena. And that brings us to the present, where now in 2020 and even starting in 2019, we are seeing a lot of institutions coming in and coming in various ways. Some of them are investing in the space. Some of them are buying Bitcoins as an asset allocation in their portfolio. Some of them are investing in the developers that are building the Bitcoin technology. And props to Square and Fidelity. They were the early investor adoption, but since then we've seen a number of players come in. Big brands, organizations, companies that you normally wouldn't think would be interested in Bitcoin. Just today, fresh off the press, DBS, which is the largest bank in Singapore, announced that they are launching a digital asset exchange. So a lot of institutions coming in, and that can be attributed to like the sudden increase in price, sudden interest in Bitcoin. And biggest being PayPal. PayPal recently came out announcing that they're going to support Bitcoin and crypto payments, which is huge because PayPal has upwards of 300 million users on their platform. And this tweet in particular, I found interesting, and I wanted to share that now that these big names are coming into the space, a lot of banks are starting to think about their strategy and how they're going to support Bitcoin. But like I mentioned, I brought up Jamie Dimon specifically before because they did a 180-degree turn on their stance. The thing that they called fraud back in 2017, now they've created a whole department of people working on blockchain and Bitcoin technology and supporting the space. So you're seeing this huge change in narrative, and that's causing some of the price effect. And talking quickly about the future, there are these two schools of thought, and I'm not going to go deeper into this, but one school of thought says that Bitcoin will, be this electronic payment system, which was, peer-to-peer, so you don't have to go through a bank to transfer money. And also because it's peer-to-peer, it's cheaper. You're not going through any organization, paying any fees in the middle, and also faster. So this concept of electronic payment, which is globally accessible. So some people believe that Bitcoin's, that's the future of Bitcoin, where everyone will use Bitcoin for buying and selling things and transferring payments across the world. The other concept is sound money, which is, it's not a coincidence that Bitcoin was born out of the last financial crisis. So after 2008, Bitcoin was founded in 2009, and there's a reason for it. So Bitcoin is, equivalent to there are people who believe that Bitcoin is equivalent to digital gold or a good inflation hedge, especially in today's economic scenario where the Fed is printing a ton of money. Bitcoin has a fixed supply, and we also believe that Bitcoin has inverse correlation with the market. So that's still to be played out, but that is, there are two schools of thought about the future. And just to quickly highlight, this space is not just about money. So money, the last 8 minutes of my talk was about Bitcoin and how it can be a form of payments and money, but there's so much more to the blockchain space that, this is a landscape, and it's just exploded into, various industries, be it gaming industry, be it data storage industry, be it, you name it, and there's some application of blockchain technology. So it goes way beyond money. And specifically, I work at a company called Saya, now called Skynet, where we are focused on decentralized cloud storage. So that's a very different use case than money. And quick disclaimer, none of this is an investment advice. I'm not an investment advisor. So, if you want to invest in Bitcoin, research, do your own research, learn and educate yourself about it. And there always is a saying that you should always invest what you can afford to lose. And that's specifically true for Bitcoin, given that it's still a new technology. With that, quickly, all of this sounds great, but how can you get started? How can you learn about the space? So with that background in mind, Women in Blockchain, which is an organization I founded in 2017, we created a beginner's guide for people who are interested to learn about blockchain technology, who find that there's so much going on in the space. Where do I even begin? And this is the answer. Hopefully, it's pretty intuitive, good design. It's broken down into modules, so you can pick and choose which module you want to dive into. If you want to learn more about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency in general, some use cases, there are a bunch of different resources in there for you to learn. And lastly, before I end my talk, just wanted to do a shameless plug. Women Blockchain, like I mentioned, is an organization to empower women to learn and grow in the crypto careers. And if you're interested, we have similar to the resources that I shared, like a blockchain beginner's guide. We do monthly meetups for you to learn from different speakers in the space. We have other initiatives, so please feel free to check us out. Our website and Twitter is on there. And thank you.